So what, were you thinking of asking some questions or
Yes,
wanted to know?
I was just curious because I think I've seen you here or someone else
Okay.
with the pulpit. So,
Yeah.
I just thought I'd just come and see
Well,
what you're all about.
Okay. Well, we basically come here to explain why we believe Catholicism is true, the one true religion, as we call it. And what we say first is, it depends on where a person's at. So if they're an atheist, we have to start from an earlier stage. If they're already a Christian, we don't have to go through certain basics. So it depends where you're at. But if it were arguments for the existence of God, that'd be one thing. So I don't know where you'd want to start.
Okay, well, I'd say I'm a cultural Christian, so
Okay.
I've had some experience with Catholicism as well as Eastern Orthodoxy and Protestantism, all of them really.
Okay.
And I would say I believe in objective morality.
Yes.
I believe that's found not only in the Christian religion, I believe it's in all religions to a greater or lesser degree. And when it comes to the question of God, I would say I equate God with morality, so I believe in God in that sense of an objective morality.
So there's no God with a personality.
I would say, I know it's a bit heretical, I would say we're all gods in a sense, sons of God, if you want to put it that way,
Right.
which I know is an idea found within Christianity. That you've got the only begotten Son of God, and then we're sort of sons of God through adoption through Jesus Christ. So, if you want to put it that way.
But of course, we'd say sons of God in that there is a God to be a son of.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm sort of saying we are all gods.
Yeah, gotcha. All right then. Now, but do you think that when we die, that's it? We're gone? We dust to dust, ashes to ashes, that sort of thing?
With the body, yes. But
Yes.
I mean, like the Greeks said, we're sort of tripartite, body, soul and spirit. So.
Oh, so you believe there's a soul and spirit then?
Yeah.
And what happens when we die?
So I think, obviously some of the Eastern religions would believe in reincarnation.
Okay.
So they believe that after death we're reborn.
Yes.
Or, in Christianity you've got the Judgment Day.
Yes.
And then heaven or hell. So I personally I don't like the sort of finality of heaven and hell. I prefer the sort of cyclical nature of dying and being reborn.
So more a Hindu kind of approach.
Yeah, that appeals to me more. But I could accept heaven and hell as sort of final places of judgment. I just sort of wonder what would we do in heaven all the time and get a bit boring.
That is the question. But it's a difficulty of understanding what eternity is like, since we only know time. But given that I know I can't say how many games of footy we could play, how many musical instruments we could learn, how many games of chess we could play, and how long we could go on before we've done everything in the sphere of entertainment, and then say, right, I've got nothing to do now. But yet there's eternity still ahead of me. So without going into that, I would say that I would accept reincarnation. I would accept some other way of looking at the world if I felt I had some reason to believe something else. So I haven't started from what I like. In fact, though I was baptised a Catholic as a baby and raised as a Catholic, I became an atheist in my teens. Came back to the faith not through any reasoning or anything like that, not through any great crisis, but just came back one day, and that was that. Didn't know why. But I'd say it was by the Holy Spirit. But that's my explanation. But it was a strict switch of a light off to on, like that. And then, of course, over time, I could have gone in a different direction. But I found Catholicism to be the best explanation of reality, the reality we know, and the reality that I expect is beyond this life. Why do I say that? Because I think that Catholicism is the only really historically grounded religion. When I say that, I mean that this church of mine says there's something called the Bible. Well, it's inspired by God and so that. But that doesn't matter initially. They're just a bunch of documents to start with. It's generally accepted the 27 New Testament documents are 1st century AD documents. Some say, well, the second letter of Peter may come in the 2nd century. Book of Revelation at the end of the 1st century, but by and large, the documents are generally 1st century documents, which tells me they're telling me about what was going on, what the thinking of people who call themselves Christians was in the 1st century AD. And although there's different views as to when in the 1st century some of those documents were written, so we can say there's a consensus that a few decades after Jesus died, they were written. So they are representing the views of those who may have known him, heard him, and were possibly disciples of those who've known him and heard him. So very early. And they all testify to this certain crucial things. Now I could put aside particular miracles, because maybe that didn't happen. But if all the miracles that had happened times 10, yet he'd not risen from the dead, the religion would be false, because its central claim is the resurrection of him from the dead by his own power. So we have the crucifixion, which is generally not disputed amongst historians of that period. Everything in the New Testament suggests a crucifixion method which was typical of Roman government and punishment. And it's just an uncontroversial thing that a person who gets in trouble with the Romans is going to be killed in one way or another, crucifixion often. The resurrection from the dead is the key thing. So that's where I have to focus. Now, what we have is, in those 1st century documents, a bunch of people are clearly believing he died and risen from the dead. Why do they believe that? Because various people were saying they'd seen this, and they managed to convince those who hadn't seen it. But those people who said they'd seen it, if it was one person who'd just seen it, then he could be deluded. A bunch of people, very unlikely they're deluded, because, a delusion goes on inside an individual's head, and different people have different delusions, and their versions of events would conflict. But here we have a consistency of core belief about that resurrection. And we can say that if I were to go around telling lies to you about something, it might be because I've got a motivation to get money or fame, get money from you, defraud you. But these guys could gain nothing, because under the Jews and the Romans, there would be hunted men, because they were followers of this guy the Romans had killed, and the Jews had instigated the killing of. So there's nothing to be gained financially or in terms of their personal safety or power. Then there's the fact that the Romans had a good method of getting hold of people, torturing them, and they could have extracted confessions of deception from them. But in all the dialogues, all the back and forth between Christians and the Christian apologists and those who were against the Christian case, people weren't able to say, we got hold of such and such disciple, we extracted a confession from him that he hadn't really seen the risen Jesus. Never happens. None of the apologists against us are contradicting our people, like say Justin Martyr, when these things are said. So that lends credibility to the actual spreading of the belief that eyewitnesses really did see him risen from the dead. So having got to that point, I then say to myself, okay, now which group of Christians should I belong to, if any? Well,
is this the short version of why you should be a Catholic?
It is as short as I can make it. I hope. But now, because the first bit this bit so far has got me to why I should be a Christian, in a broad sense.
Belong to any group of Christians.
Now the next point is whether you should belong to any group or a specific group. That's the question I'm on to now with this gentleman. So my view is that I must be a Catholic because I must belong. First, I must find out what is the church that Jesus started, because in those documents there's a reference to something called the church, and it has authority over the believers, and its leaders are those called the apostles, the 12 apostles, and those whom they appoint, like St. Timothy and St. Titus. And these men tell a Christian what Christianity is, because the individual person who's come to belief can't make up Christianity for himself, or just sit there and wait for the Holy Spirit to enlighten him. He has to go to the apostles or their appointees to find out. Now, my church traces itself all the way back as an institution to that time. Right, that's why I'm a Catholic, because no other church can do that.